medical school. So for most people, a traditional path to medical school is followed where you do 4 years of college. Here you get a high GPA and a high MCAT. You do a bunch of extracurriculars, do well with your personal statement and your interview, and then you finally get in. Now the nice thing about this path is that it kind of provides you with the tunnel vision that allows you to focus on your one big thing in life. And at the time, that's getting into medical school. So more or less, every decision you make is aimed towards that goal. Is this helping me get into medical school or not? And you kind of just assume that once you get into medical school, everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows because you've done that hard thing. It's nice to have this tunnel vision because you're not really distracted by anything else. You're just aiming for this North Star you have. But the thing is that once you get in, and obviously you should be proud of yourself and happy that you got in, but once you're in, that big goal, that North Star is gone. It's no longer there. You did the seemingly impossible and got into medical school against all odds by obviously working hard to get your GPA and your MCAT, as well as your volunteering and all the stress with interviews. But as we talked about in a previous podcast, once you're into medical school, being a medical student doesn't feel like a big deal because everybody around you is a medical student as well. So that loss of a one big goal can feel sort of like a loss of purpose. There's no North Star to chase until you find another one. And this is when you realize the reality of medical education. Everyone loves to talk about lifelong learning in their medical school interviews and their personal statements as if it's a good thing. But once you're actually in it, you realize what lifelong really means. There's truly no finish line. There's always going to be that next step in the journey, whether it's another exam, another interview, another boatload of information that you have to memorize. You start to realize that now you have to outcompete all the smart people again, only this time it's for a residency position, just to get to the next step of being an attending. And then you realize that the rest of your life, whether it's relationships, family goals, hobbies, passions that you left unexplored, none of that goes on pause for you. Time flies, and you begin to question if you're doing the right thing. On top of that, the more you learn, you realize it feels like the less you know, and then things can start to feel like they're futile. You work hard to memorize everything, and then you forget everything you learned right after the block exam, which doesn't feel like a big deal in first year, but as you get closer and closer to third year, which is when you'll be dealing with patients, and you start realizing you don't actually know anything, it can be a very scary feeling. And it also makes you think, what am I even doing here and paying all this tuition for if I don't even know anything going into the hospital? You start questioning, if I don't remember any of this stuff right now, how am I ever going to be a doctor? How am I ever going to handle people's lives in my hands? All that work that I put in to get here, was it even worth it? The rest of these people seem so put together. Am I the only one struggling? What if I just put all these hours and money into something I genuinely enjoy? Would that have worked out? All of these questions kind of come rushing into your head and can make you feel like you're having an existential crisis. Every medical student goes through this at one point or another, but it's rarely ever talked about because you're in such a type A, high achieving environment that people look at this kind of stuff as weakness, which is completely the wrong idea. We can tell you for a fact that if you're going through this, you're not alone in this struggle. There have been times during exam weeks where I've had to go to the bathroom and basically talk to myself in the mirror, telling myself to keep it together. Telling myself that I worked way too hard to give up now. That it's going to be worth it one day. And I still choose to believe that, but the honest answer is I have no clue if it's going to be worth it one day. We all like to believe that things happen for a reason, or we're on a certain path for a reason, but honestly, who knows? Maybe I should have stayed in that band from high school and we'd be on tour right now. I've honestly had friends drop out and switch to engineering, which they enjoyed more. I've had friends who seem the most put together have to get therapists to work things out. People have taken leaves of absences and traveled the world to find themselves. I used to think this type of stuff was ridiculous, but now I understand and it all makes sense. Medicine's such a long, never-ending journey and a commitment of your life to a field. It makes sense to explore your options, and most of us don't do that in college. So remember, the most important thing is to remember that this is completely normal and you're not alone going through it. As far as dealing with it, the first point is to go into the crisis. Instead of telling yourself that everything is okay and just powering through, take some time and explore what you're feeling. If you need professional help, seek that out. Like I said, I've had friends go through therapy and it's been great for them. Genuinely explore what you would be doing if you weren't here and how feasible that option is. Don't be afraid of uncertainty or fear if you don't know how it will work out. You have to understand that a few years of ups and downs now is worth the rest of your life doing what you genuinely want to do. Explore your reasons for going into medicine and see if they still hold up, and determine for yourself if it's still something you want to continue. Not what other people will think if you quit, not the title or the status or the money. Is it something that you genuinely want to be? Keep in mind, being a medical student is very different than being a doctor. So if it helps, shadow some physicians and determine for yourself if it's still something that you want to do. But the worst thing to do is just ignore these feelings and pretend that everything's okay, because they will eventually catch up to you. And when they do, it could end up being much worse than it would be if you just faced them head on and understood that, listen, I'm going through something, there is a problem, and I need to address it. Now, speaking of shadowing doctors, it's very important in a situation like this, or even in general, to find mentors. If you do want to continue with medicine, then it's helpful to find either upper year medical students, residents, or even attendings. Find people whose personalities you vibe with and talk to them and ask them how they've dealt with these feelings, because I can guarantee you they have. We've had experienced lecturers tell us that they still have feelings like this 20 years into their career. And it definitely helps to see all these people that you look up to and you find to be perfect people and so much better than you. They're human too, and they felt these things and dealt with them, and you can use their wisdom to help you. Most people are going to be happy to help, and they're going to be flattered that you look to them for their leadership and wisdom. Another helpful thing is to try and achieve some balance in your life. Even though your schedule is very busy, it's important to make time for yourself and doing things that you enjoy outside of medicine. Now, balance doesn't mean it has to be 50-50. It just means enough to keep you sane and keep you happy. So if you do have interests outside of medicine, which you definitely should, do them as hobbies, do them as passions. It doesn't necessarily have to be your job. Use our other podcasts and videos to learn how to study efficiently, and that time you free up, you should be putting into these things that you enjoy, that you feel like you're missing out on, or even that you might want to pursue instead of medicine. Work on it on the side and see where it goes. So those are the 3 big tips we have for you guys today. Please, above all else, just remember that this is completely normal and you're not alone going through it. Every medical student is going through this at one point or another. Some are just better at hiding it than others. As always, feel free to reach out to us, let us know what you want to talk about next, or if you just want to vent, we're here for you. Throw us an email, throw us a comment, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.